tipped his hat to you, Minister. So Argentina, just can you give us sort of just a précis? What was going on so wrong for so many years in Argentina, and what are you looking to address? How are you fixing it? Big question.
Well, thank you, Andy. It's a pleasure for me to be here and to be in this panel with honorable people. It took me 12 years to get back to Davos. My last time here was in 2004.
Welcome back.
I was governor of the central bank back then, and just like you mentioned in your question, I believe my country has gone the wrong way pretty much ever since. We had the resources, both fiscal and FX-wise. So basically, this was a story about populism with resources, and it lasted as long as the resources lasted. I mean, as simple as that. I could speak all day about the last 12 years in Argentina. I don't think that's really the point. The point is that there's a new government in place that in only a month's time, we've removed a significant part of the regulations and of the obstacles that were preventing the economy from actually plowing ahead. This is an economy that has barely shown growth over the last 4 years, almost no private sector labor growth. There are many areas of the economy that are basically underutilized. And President Macri's commitment is to fix all that in the shortest period of time with an idea of one of the main targets of his campaign is to bring Argentina as close as possible to the zero poverty line, which in itself is a massive, ambitious target. Right now, despite the boon of resources that Argentina has enjoyed throughout the previous administration, not only because of terms of trade positive shocks, but also because of a massive tax pressure on the private sector. Still, Argentina is showing poverty rates of around 30%, which is unacceptable. It's immoral. We are one of the best food producers in the world. We can feed more than 400 million people. And yet there are 10 million people in Argentina that don't make ends meet. So these are the things we'll be working on over the next mandate. And I'm very happy to be part of that adventure going forward. Just a couple of points on the debt issue. And of course, I'm willing to answer questions about Argentina as well. But I don't want to miss the opportunity to give my 2 cents on what Ken was talking about. From an Argentine perspective, I mean, we are champions of debt, aren't we? We make the headlines because of that. But the paradox right now is that everyone is talking about the trial of the century and Argentina's holdout, stand alone and whatnot. When you put it in context, it's, the claim that we are now negotiating at the New York courts is less than 2 points of GDP. So
you're talking about the Elliott management
absolutely.
Litigation, the hedge fund in New York
it's
City.
small change compared to the 60 points worth of GDP that debt has increased in China over the last 3 or 4 years. So first message there is let's put things in context. Second message is within our first month in office, we've come to the table, we've sat down with the mediator. We want to put an offer on the table. We wanted to do that actually next week. There were some logistic problems, whatever that means, on the other side. So we will have to wait until the following week. But we're eager to put this thing behind, basically, in fair terms, of course.
All right, I want to drill down into that issue a little bit more, but I do want to get a... Ken, you have a point?
I'll just make one two-hander. Many people think of Argentina as the debt champion, and I'm sorry to say you're not. Venezuela, for example, has defaulted far more often. However, you do it with great flair.
Wow.
Okay.
May I make a general point on the debt issue? I think just to lay the groundworks of the discussion. What's different this time in emerging markets? A few things. First thing is that it's a lot more corporate and household debt that's gone up rather than public debt. and it's a lot more domestic rather than external debt. So in that regard, it's a completely different animal from the historical emerging market perspective that has been so well documented by Ken along the years. That's the reason why you're not seeing balance of payment crisis in the emerging market world, despite the fact that commodity prices have collapsed. The benefit and the beauty of floating exchange rate regimes is something most countries are actually enjoying. We've just joined ourselves because, Argentina has had for the last 10 years or so more or less a fixed peg with very stringent capital controls, and that is something we've removed. But I think it's a very different animal from what we've seen in the last episodes. My thought here would be, don't look too much into FX reserves and balance of payments. Look more into the domestic banking system in each country. And this is where I wouldn't be too in comfort with what's going on in China. I think, as Ken said, we don't have good information about many issues in China. The banking system is the place where we should be looking at.
Okay, we'll talk about China a little bit more. Go ahead, Barry.
Argentina has a very low proportion of public and household and corporate debt by comparison to the United States, which is close to 280% of GDP, and Argentina might be 60 to 70?
Not even. No. I mean, corporate and household debt is less than 20% of GDP. So it's a very under-leveraged economy.
See, people know a lot about Argentina,
the
economy. These two guys.
That's why I'm talking about China.
But it also brings the point that
Minister Prat-Gay, I want to ask you a little bit more about this situation with Elliott Management, just to give people some background. So this is a hedge fund in New York where they bought a bunch of Argentine bonds, and then there was a question of whether they were going to get paid back or not, and then they have sued the country of Argentina, saying they want everything back. That is a very simplistic description. Are you in a position to say that you're paying them back at a certain level, cents on the dollar? How are you resolving this issue with them? What's the plan?
Well, some background information for everyone in the room and everyone watching us to take away. What's fair value? That's a difficult question. What's original value and what's face value? Right now, the litigants have won their lawsuit in the court, NML and Elliott, but there are also some Me Too's that basically won a lawsuit against Argentina on a pari passu clause. What the pari passu clause means is that all creditors need to be treated equally. And therefore, right now, the situation that we've got is that even if Argentina has restructured its 93% of its original debt that was defaulted in 2001, 7% of that debt, the holdouts, are basically, with this injunction at the New York courts, are impeding Argentina to be current with that 93% of the bondholders who accepted the deal. The deal that Argentina offered in 2005 and again in 2010 is now worth, how much would you say on the original capital?
I have no idea. I'm sorry.
Make
I
a
wouldn't
guess.
venture to
Make
guess.
a guess. I'm going to be the
You mean
moderator.
cents on the dollar?
Yeah.
78 cents on the dollar.
It's above 100. It's around 120.
Why wouldn't they take that?
Well, they asked for 350.
Oh, that's why.
But see, we need to be clear about these numbers, because otherwise it looks as if Argentina doesn't want to pay what they owe and they should pay the full amount. There are some bonds in the arsenal of bonds that Argentina issued during the 90s. More than 150 bonds were actually defaulted. There are different bonds, of course, but there are bonds that had a very particular accrual interest rate mechanism. And when I say particular, is annual rates of 80% per annum.
80.
80. So while the litigants were seeking for justice, fair enough, in the court, they were sitting on a very juicy, 60, 70, 80% per annum accrual interest rate, just on the basis of these were floating rate notes that would adjust for Argentina's country risk. Argentina's country risk, of course, we didn't know what it was because there was no market for most of these bonds. But someone was actually writing down, a country risk rate somewhere, and that was embedded into the contract. So there, for some cases, when you look at the claim is worth 10 cents on the dollar for the original capital, 90 cents on the dollar for the interest bill. I mean,
Right.
we can go over and over again this. My opinion is that we need to discuss whether this is a fair claim or not. And this is all we've said. We've sat to the table, we've said we want to honor the debt. There are 30 cents on this claim that is original capital. We want to go ahead and settle that down. Let's discuss the interest bill. Because I don't think you're going to find, not even in the real estate market, you're going to find a more juicy investment over that period. I mean, this claim beats anything over that period of time.
Right.
And therefore, that's the discussion we want to have. Again, Andy, this is just, 3 points worth of our GDP.
Right.
It's really a massive waste of energy, time, and argumentation. We want to put it behind, but we want to put it in fair terms, and we want the world to be aware that it was not true what our previous administration kept saying. It was not true that it was the haircut of the century, 75% haircut. That was not true.
Right.
It was not true that that the claim now is equal to 100. The claim is equal to 350. And I think this will set a precedent for, as Barry was saying, bubbles come and go. Defaults will have defaults in the future. And I think it's very important for the judicial system in the US and for the global financial market that we're clear on what's being discussed, such that we don't make the same mistakes again going forward.
Sounds like you're committed to resolving this.
I just wanted to make a broader point. I don't know if it's suitable for this discussion or not, but we're talking about debt all the time. I think we should spend some time at central bank debt because to some extent, at least my view is that this might have been the beginning of the cycle we're going through right now. You look at central bank debt, basically money printing, over the last 6 years or so, it's gone up like 30 points worth of global GDP. So that's a massive increase in central bank debt. And we keep talking about household, corporate, public. I think we should focus on central bank debt as well because this liquidity that has been sort of instilled into the system has created, in my opinion, quite a few distortions, relative price-wise. And also it's created maybe a dilemma for most central bankers. You had Mario in the previous session here. He was the savior of the markets today because yesterday he was very committed to keep, issuing euros and so forth. And I think we should also think about that, going forward. Are we on the central bank respirator such that anytime, the market sneezes, these guys will be called in to put out the fire? And if that's the case, maybe since the last global recession, not a lot of work has been done, with the exception probably of the US, to fix things, but rather to, cover them up with massive liquidity, and that massive liquidity has gone to the right places in some cases and maybe to the not so right places in some other cases. So I just wanted to put that question over to my colleagues at the panel.